The Conservatives have just voted down a bill in Parliament that would have made our borders much more secure, to prevent more spread of COVID and to try and prevent a third wave in the UK. So, from the very beginning of the pandemic, I mean, we're talking, February 2020, very, very early stages, at least in Europe. As you know, it was pretty developed in China at that point. But from the very early stages in Europe, um, it was kind of, people were floating around the idea that maybe we should close the borders, or at least put a lot more security on the borders to try and prevent more people with COVID from coming into the country and spreading it around, affecting more people. And that basically wasn't pursued by the government at all. At the very least, after a few months, we should have had a competent track and trace system in place. We still don't really have that. We've spent, I believe now it's upwards of £40 billion on this Serco track and trace system. Serco have basically no experience in that kind of field at all anyway. Dido Harding, the person in charge of it, she doesn't have any experience in that field. It's all just about who the Conservative Party likes, who donates to them, and who their friends are. It doesn't really have to do with public safety or public service in any capacity, or competency, certainly. So that's been a total shit show. But what's even more annoying is that still the borders are not secure. What should have happened is, way back in at least maybe the end of February, early March in 2020, the border should have just been closed, right? All of them. People who were, British citizens should have been brought back in secure ways. They should have been quarantined and had to wear face masks and been tested and all these things. Because by that point, there were tests already available that worked. Now, after that point, by sort of mid-March, we should have had an effective track and trace system put in place, effective procedures that had been, devised and developed to be able to get people from other countries into the UK, and, if they had essential business or something like that. And of course, if we had any more people who were British citizens who needed to come back, or people who weren't British citizens but lived in the UK and needed to come back from whatever country. And we should have then had these procedures in place to be able to quarantine people and then test them and then make sure everything was all okay, and make sure that they stayed put and they were quarantined if they were infected. But if not, they could go about and track and trace. All this stuff should have been sorted out by sort of mid-March, late March at the latest, right? It's still not the case over a year later. That is it's infuriating, and really sort of dumbfounding, because it's one of those things that is so incredibly obvious that the government should have done. So borders still aren't secure, right? They're still not secure, and the track and trace system still hardly works. But Labour has just proposed a motion. Nick Thomas Symonds has just proposed this bill, the COVID secure bill, for basically securing the borders, as he says. He's the Shadow Home Secretary. You probably don't hear from him much. His team and his communication skills with the public is abysmal. I think pretty much no one's heard of him. But he basically put forward this legislation and said this. He said, "I beg to move that this House believes that there must be a clear, simply understood and proper hotel quarantine scheme in operation at the UK border to minimise the risk of introduction of new variants into the UK." Now, that's fairly obvious, right? But the government hasn't done it yet, right? Still. Calls on the government to immediately scrap the amber list category of the government's traffic light system for travel and place all of those countries currently on the amber list onto the red list, whilst maintaining a tightly managed green list, so as not to risk undermining the UK's successful NHS COVID-19 vaccination programme. So he goes on to talk about vaccine passports and, data on international travel, arrivals, and all of these different things, and details of decision making, which I think is a great point. and sector-specific support deals for aviation. All of it's very, very good, very, very obvious. The government obviously hasn't done this because, well, you know what, I don't know. Usually when it comes to the Tories doing something bad or not doing something good that they need to do, or at the very least just the bare minimum, you know, there's usually one thing you can kind of pinpoint. It's either, you know, corruption or incompetence. On this front, though, I'm not entirely sure. I think perhaps it's a bit of both. So Thomas Symonds is absolutely right here that really an amber list, you know, it being in that traffic light system is kind of a fool's errand, because if you have a country that's, I mean, obviously it's on the green list, and then and there's outbreaks that's starting to happen, and then you put it on the amber list, people can still come in, but there are supposed to be, you know, more procedures to stop people from just, you know, freely coming in. There has to be some sort of regulation on that. Now, not only has the regulation been haphazard at best, that kind of defeats the whole point, because now there is a growing outbreak there. So the disease can be transported to our country anyway, because it's bound to go to a red situation at some point, right? It seems very likely that will happen, especially with countries with poor healthcare infrastructure and a government that is deeply corrupt, deeply incompetent. And that's exactly what the case is in India, where the Delta variant came from. And I know we're not supposed to be calling them the name of the place that they came from to avoid, you know, potential racism or xenophobia or scapegoating or anything like that. But I think it is very important, because people are suffering and people are dying in the UK. And lockdown has had to be extended to the 19th of July because of this variant, right? Now, why on earth India wasn't on the red list as soon as this variant popped up, as soon as the government caught wind of it, is truly baffling. I really don't know why. Perhaps it was something to do with, you know, trade negotiations that are going on with India, something to do with the Prime Minister wanting to have a pally relationship with Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, who, by the way, is a horrendously racist Hindu nationalist. But regardless, this decision taking so long has without a doubt cost lives and caused a lot of hurt. So Thomas Symonds is making a really good point here. Minimizing the risk of the introduction of new variants with a proper hotel quarantine scheme. I mean, it's just common sense. The government will of course say that they've done these things and blah blah blah, but we all know they don't. You know, you can just, even the tiniest bit of digging. You know, I always encourage people every single episode of this show that they watch to go and do their own research, because I'm only human. I miss things. Sometimes I get things wrong, and obviously I'm not afraid to say my opinions. That's kind of the point of the show. So just go out and form your own. So, you know, do your own research on this as well, because it's pretty obvious that the government aren't doing nearly enough at the borders still, right? They haven't been doing enough at the borders the entire pandemic. It's really, really, really disheartening, because it's like we never learn. And it's not just the fact that we're getting so many variants of coronavirus that are coming in, that are sort of popping up all around the globe, where they risk, you know, extending the length of this pandemic. And, you know, it seems unlikely that we'll get a variant that neutralizes the vaccines, but that risk grows as long as the disease is spreading about, because it's constantly mutating, because that's how viruses work. That's how cell replication works. So, I mean, I know viruses I don't think they're strictly cells, are they? Because they go into cells. I don't know. I'm not a biologist, so but you know, you get what I'm trying to say. So this is deeply worrying, that the Tories voted this down. Every single Tory in Parliament who voted that day voted against the measurement. Purely partisan, you know, reasoning. I don't think they care, you know, what's in the bill. If Labour proposes it, then it's bad, and if the Conservatives propose it, then it's good. That's how it works. That's how the grift works. So very, very concerning stuff. I just hope that we can kind of get a handle on this. But another issue is that, you know, we have more and more risk of pandemics happening just in the modern day, you know, because of agricultural practices, you know, pumping animals in farms with massive amounts of antibiotics. It's bound to cause rises in superbugs, you know, antibiotic resistant bacteria. You know, we're destroying the environment of animals like bats, which carry so many viruses that have the possibility to become zoonotic viruses and pass on to humans, or pass on to another animal like pigs or chickens or something, that and then pass on to humans. You know, we're doing a lot of really stupid things, and the British government isn't on top of any of those things. But those are long term, so you would expect that, you know, from the Conservatives certainly, or from any politician, to not care about the long term consequences. But this is like really immediate short term stuff. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. Usually I like to end one of these videos with, well, here's what maybe you can do about it, or, you know, this hopeful thing. But I mean, at least the government have put India on the red list. I think maybe they've changed it back to amber because they just seem determined to do that. Partisanship is causing significant issues in the UK, and it seems like the Conservatives don't care if legislation is going to help stop the spread of coronavirus and stop people from suffering and dying. Because, well, if Labour does it, then it's bad. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, if you liked it, you know, then why not translate that into a digital form and click the like button? Or, you know, even better, if you're feeling extra wild, subscribe and click the bell.